Roses and Blood, a young adult vampire romance. My first year studying abroad in London was supposed to be about finding myself. Instead, I found myself broke and starving after someone stole my wallet at the train station. Just when I thought I'd have to call my parents back in California and admit defeat, a flyer literally fell from the sky and landed at my feet. Estate caretaker needed. Owner frequently travels. 500 hour. The letterhead read Sheffield Manor, in elegant Gothic script, with thorny rose designs curling around the edges. It looked too good to be true, which probably meant it was fake. But I was desperate enough to try anything. The manor's massive iron gates opened to reveal a sprawling estate that belonged in a Gothic novel. An elderly man in an impeccable black tailcoat greeted me at the front door. His blue eyes were kind, and he bowed slightly, actually bowed when he saw me. "Miss Evans," he said in a proper British accent. "You've arrived." I fumbled with the crumpled flyer. "Hi, I'm Lily Evans. I'm here about the caretaker position?" "Of course." "I am Alan, the manor's butler." He smiled warmly. "Please, follow me." The grounds were immaculate emerald lawns, rose gardens with perfect buds just beginning to bloom. It didn't look like the owner had been away at all. Inside, the manor was breathtaking. Gothic architecture, ornate furnishings, and an atmosphere that whispered of secrets and centuries past. "The master's bedroom is on the 4th floor, at the end of the left corridor," Alan explained as we walked. "You may choose any of the other available rooms for yourself. The gardens, ballroom, and common areas have their own staff. You'll only need to maintain the master's quarters and your own room. Also," he paused, "you may explore anywhere in the manor except the attic." Something about that warning sent a chill down my spine, but Alan's gentle blue eyes were reassuring. "Do I have the job?" I asked hesitantly. "Yes, Miss Evans. You were the only applicant." That first night, I had the strangest dream. I was trapped in darkness, unable to move. Then a door opened, letting in a sliver of light. Footsteps approached, measured, deliberate. My heart pounded like a drum. A figure appeared, backlit, so I couldn't make out his face, but there was something ethereal about him. He stopped in front of me and leaned down slightly. A jeweled scepter touched my cheek, cold and beautiful. "Don't worry," came a husky voice. "We'll be together forever soon." I tried to look up, to meet his eyes, but an ice-cold hand covered my face gently. "Don't look at me like that, little Rose." I jerked awake, gasping. The next morning, Alan was already seated at the breakfast table when I stumbled downstairs with dark circles under my eyes. "Good morning, Miss Evans." "Did you sleep well?" 0:6. I wanted to tell him about the weird dream, but then I noticed the thick stack of bills tucked under my plate. More money than I'd ever seen in one place. "Yes," I lied, meeting Alan's kind smile. I slept very well. Alan had a talent for appearing and disappearing like a ghost, but every morning brought a generous salary that kept me from asking too many questions. I settled into a routine of working at the manor and attending classes at the local university. Professor Eugene, who taught humanities, loved sharing local folklore, especially stories about the ancient vampire nobility that supposedly once ruled these lands. "The vampire count sleeps in his castle," he'd say dramatically, awakening only when the blood moon rises to resurrect his bride. He commands bats to kill God's doves and instructs thorns to strangle the church's lilies. He lures innocent maidens into eternal sorrow. My classmate Marcus, a redhead who was retaking the class with me, muttered under his breath, "I heard the vampire count has a thing for dark-haired, dark-eyed girls from the East." I only half listened. The job was easy enough, just tidying up the master's room daily for excellent pay. I wasn't about to look a gift horse in the mouth. One stormy night, as I was about to go to bed, I remembered I'd opened the master bedroom window that morning and forgotten to close it. The Persian rugs in there probably cost more than my college tuition. I raced upstairs in my bare feet and burst into the room, flicking on the lights. Thank God the floor was dry. I quickly shut the window and was checking the rugs when the lights suddenly went out. A power outage? But before I could process what was happening, something slammed into me from behind, pinning me to the floor. Sharp pain pierced my neck. Lightning illuminated the room for a split second, and I saw his face, clearly silver hair, green eyes, devastatingly beautiful. Except for the fangs at his lips, stained with my blood. Professor Eugene's vampire legends suddenly didn't seem so fictional. He studied me for a long moment, confusion flickering in those otherworldly eyes. My neck was still bleeding, his silver hair tickling my cheek as he leaned over me. In the silence broken only by rain, he spoke in a voice like spring ice melting over a river. Who are you? Lily. Earth to Lily. Marcus's voice snapped me back to reality. I instinctively touched my neck. It was smooth, unmarked. Another dream? You look like you've seen a ghost, Marcus said. Speaking of which, everyone's talking about the new professor. Apparently, he's some green-eyed hottie. I responded without thinking. Green eyes? I've seen someone like that. Really? What'd he look like? Green eyes, silver hair, long black coat, pale skin like porcelain. I described him absent-mindedly while digging through my bag for textbooks. Beautiful but cold, almost cruel. Marcus had gone completely still. Following his horrified stare, I looked up to see the new professor standing in the doorway. Silver hair. Green eyes. The vampire from my dreams. Our eyes met for a moment before he looked away with cool indifference. Meet Professor Lysander, Marcus whispered, barely containing his laughter at my mortification. I spent the entire class trying to ignore the sensation of being watched. When the bell rang, I practically fled. Cutting through a storage corridor, I caught the heavy scent of blood and heard quiet sobbing behind a closed door. As I hesitated, the door cracked open. Lily? What are you doing here? Professor Eugene emerged, his sleeves soaked with blood. Professor, you're hurt. He glanced at the stain and smiled sheepishly. Sorry, didn't mean to startle you. He looked at the darkening sky. You should head home early tonight, Lily. And don't look at the moon. After he left, curiosity got the better of me. Inside the storage room, I found a silver bullet casing in the corner. As I bent to pick it up, a bloodied figure suddenly burst from the shadows, racing past me and leaving a trail of crimson. I chased after it without thinking, following the trail all the way to an old church. The stained glass windows glowed in the twilight, mesmerizing. Almost in a trance, I reached up and tapped on the glass. The window swung open from inside. A beautiful young man with golden hair and pale gold eyes looked down at me, clearly annoyed. Sorry, I stammered. He studied me with a frown. Why do you smell like a creature of darkness? What? His eyes narrowed dangerously. A vampire. When I returned to the manor that evening, I found someone lounging on the sofa while Alan stood respectfully nearby. In the dim light, I recognized the familiar silhouette Professor Lysander. The vampire from my dreams. I tried to sneak past to the stairs, but Alan called out, "Miss Evans." I turned stiffly. Lysander looked at me with a slight smile, as if we were old friends. You're back late. Meet anyone interesting? I instinctively clutched the silver cross the golden-haired young man had given me, shaking my head. Lysander didn't press the issue. Instead, he had Alan prepare dinner and offered me triple my current salary with an apology for the previous night's misunderstanding. The money was too good to refuse. I swallowed my resignation speech. Even with Lysander back, Alan didn't cancel my cleaning duties. So the next morning, I hesitantly entered the master bedroom. Heavy curtains blocked almost all light, making the room cold and tomb-like. Crimson and gold bed hangings hung in heavy folds, occasionally stirring in an unfelt breeze. Something drew me toward the bed. I found myself pulling back the curtains. Lysander lay there with his eyes closed, silver hair spread across the pillow, hands folded over his chest. Like a fairy tale prince waiting for true love's kiss. Except he wasn't breathing. I knew I should leave, but I couldn't stop staring. Something about this felt familiar, like I'd done this 1,000 times before. "Get out," a voice in my head warned. "Before he wakes up." But I was frozen, lost in fragmented memories that didn't belong to me. A figure in a coffin opening his eyes. "You shouldn't be here." "Go back." Someone clinging to his arm. "No, I want to stay with you." My head pounded as the visions faded. When I refocused, Lysander was awake, watching me with those stunning eyes. I realized I was leaning halfway over him, my face inches from his. My arms gave out from holding the position too long, and I collapsed onto him. He caught me easily. "Lily," he said softly. I could only see his throat from this angle, the way it moved when he spoke. "I'm sorry for intruding, sir." "Shh," he interrupted gently. "Listen to me, Lily. You shouldn't be getting involved with a vampire. It's dangerous." I stared at his lowered lashes. "I don't understand." "You will," he said with infinite tenderness. "But when that time comes, I won't let you go." The last part was so quiet, I almost missed it. "What did you say?" He closed his eyes and didn't answer. Neither Lysander nor I mentioned what happened in his room. He came and went like a ghost, appearing only occasionally for dinner. Meanwhile, disturbing rumors began circulating at school about vampire sightings. Then someone found a body in the stairwell completely drained of blood, with a horrific wound on the neck. I thought of the bloodied figure I'd chased from the storage room. "Make way for the church's holy son," someone shouted. I pressed against the wall as white-robed clergy members passed. Surrounding a golden-haired young man, I recognized the one from the church window. Marcus whistled in awe. "That's Gabriel Stone, the Holy Son. This must be serious." I tried to avoid Gabriel's gaze, hiding behind Marcus, who was obliviously excited about potentially meeting the famous vampire hunter. Gabriel's footsteps paused in front of me. Without looking up, I heard his voice. "We meet again, Lily." Gabriel brought me back to the church. "Relax," he said, noting my rigid posture. "The church isn't as brutal as vampires. The vampire scent around you is stronger now," he observed. "You're getting closer to him, aren't you?" I looked away without responding. "He feels familiar to you, doesn't he?" Gabriel's pale gold eyes reflected the light, showing emotions I couldn't read. "What else do you know?" I grabbed his sleeve desperately. Gabriel's fingers drummed on the table. "The manor's attic is forbidden for a reason. All the truth is hidden there. You just don't want to face it, Lily." He looked up, his white robes emphasizing his ethereal appearance. "One last question, have we met before?" 06. Over the following days, I carefully probed Lysander for information about the vampire attacks. He swirled the red liquid in his wine glass too thick to be wine. "Only lesser vampires attack humans randomly." He paused, probably remembering our first encounter. I couldn't help but laugh. "Lily," he said with fond exasperation. Taking advantage of his good mood, I told him about the attacks at school and Gabriel's investigation. His expression darkened when I mentioned the Holy Son. "Church people are all hypocritical," he said coldly. "Stay away from him." I watched him drink, counting silently in my head. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. I caught Lysander as he slumped forward. "Sir? Sir?" He was unconscious, just as Gabriel had predicted. Apparently, even ancient vampires were lightweights. I carefully supported him while sneaking toward the forbidden attic, but his hand suddenly clamped around my wrist. His eyes opened, pupils an intense emerald green. "Sir?" He looked dazed for a moment before his gaze sharpened. I tried to play innocent. "You're drunk." "Let me help you too," he cut me off by pulling me into a desperate kiss. "You came back, Lillian," he whispered against my lips. The name hit me like lightning. Lillian. At the church, when Gabriel first saw me, his lips had moved soundlessly, forming a name I couldn't quite catch. Lillian. Lysander's fangs grazed my neck as he searched for the pulse point. I submitted to his embrace, letting him drink as visions flashed through my mind. "How I wish we could become butterflies," he murmured like poetry, "living just 3 summers. 3 days of joy would be better than 100 years of loneliness." He kissed me again, sharing the metallic taste of my own blood. His eyes were so tender, I almost forgot he was a predator and I was his prey. I closed my eyes and kissed him back fiercely. After that night, I found myself avoiding Lysander out of confusion and embarrassment. The vampire attacks at school were quickly resolved with the church's intervention. "The vampire you saw escaping was one of Prince Andrew's servants," Gabriel explained during one of our meetings. "Prince Andrew?" Of the 7 original vampire princes, only 2 remain active. The vampire clans are divided between them, Prince Andrew and the one you know. He looked down. "Prince Lysander." My heart lurched, but I kept my expression neutral. "There's something you're not telling me," I said. Gabriel's fingers tightened. "The professor's lawn party tonight, you shouldn't go." But I was already reaching for my phone, seeing Lysander's message, "Come home early tonight." "I'm going," I told Gabriel defiantly. Professor Eugene's backyard was packed with more people than I'd ever seen at a university party. Marcus and I were swept into the crowd, dancing under flashing lights that seemed designed to disorient. As the evening progressed, Marcus went to start a barbecue while I followed a server to the kitchen for food. But instead of the kitchen, he led me to the back garden, where dark figures emerged from the shadows. 7 or 8 vampires surrounded a man in a black cloak who looked me up and down with obvious satisfaction. "So you're Lysander's little pet?" My blood ran cold. When Lysander arrived, I was barely conscious from blood loss. "Andrew, you've crossed a line." Lysander's voice was deadly calm. I leaned weakly against him, watching the standoff between the 2 vampire princes while church forces, led by a grim-faced Gabriel, surrounded the area. Through my dizziness, everything suddenly clicked into place. Gabriel had told me the escaping vampire was Andrew's servant. But I'd forgotten Professor Eugene had been in that storage room too. Eugene worked for the church. I was bait in their plan to eliminate the vampire clans. Eugene had orchestrated everything perfectly. He'd left the wounded vampire alive, deliberately, knowing I'd investigate. He'd calculated that I would chase the creature, leading me straight to Gabriel. The only thing he hadn't anticipated was Gabriel opening that church window and pulling me to safety. If Andrew had found me that day, smelling of Lysander's scent, the vampire war would have started then and there. The church could have swept in to destroy both weakened sides. Tonight's party was the same trap, finally sprung. I looked at Gabriel standing in the shadows, his expression pained. "I'll make this right, Lily," he called out. But it was too late for apologies. Lysander carried me home and, for my safety, confined me to the manor. "You can't keep me prisoner," I protested, grabbing his coat. "You were too reckless," he said without emotion. "If I'd been a moment later, you'd be dead." After a week of house arrest, I finally regained enough strength to climb to the forbidden attic. The attic holds all the truth. You just don't want to face it. Gabriel's words echoed in my mind as I pushed open the door. Inside was a glass coffin surrounded by white candles. A dark-haired girl in an elaborate dress lay within, hands folded over a white rose. The girl had my face. All the strange dreams, the sense of familiarity, the fragmented memories, they crashed over me like a tidal wave. Lily. I didn't turn around at Lysander's voice. Good evening, sir. The silver cross Gabriel had given me burned in my palm. I faced him with a smile. He took my right hand and gently pried my fingers open, revealing the cross. Are you going to kill me, Lily? I closed my eyes. Do I have a choice? The cross clattered to the floor. You can't keep me here forever, sir. I'm not a rose in your garden. I looked at the coffin, then back at him. The living Lily will never be the dead Lillian. Candlelight flickered in his green eyes, impossible to read. Who do you really love? I whispered. The kingdom of Padan's princess was born during the first snowfall of winter. Ravens broke the cathedral's stained glass on the day of her birth. She was born with black hair and dark eyes, completely unlike the golden-haired royal family. The priest declared her cursed, destined to bring misfortune and die before her 20th birthday. Exiled from the palace, she was raised in a remote chapel. At 17, when the kingdom fell to invaders, she became a political offering to the neighboring realm. I knelt before a makeshift altar in the small chapel, praying desperately. Dead animals and strange artifacts were scattered around a cat, bat wings, and a single fang of unknown origin. The chapel door burst open. Your Holiness. I quickly hid the fang in my palm, trying to block his view of the altar. Gabriel, resplendent in white robes, surveyed the gruesome display with a furrowed brow. Was I interrupting some dark ritual, Lillian? I jutted my chin defiantly. I'm going to summon the most powerful demon to take me away from here. My voice dropped to a whisper. Gabriel, I don't want to marry that bald old king. You know, the priest said I'll die before 20 anyway. Can't I at least be happy before then? Gabriel stood to leave, but I grabbed his sleeve. You won't tell Father Ian, will you? No, he said curtly, then walked away. I watched his retreating figure. I knew he hated when I mentioned the prophecy, but I couldn't help myself. It hung over both our lives like a shadow. That young priest likes you. A voice came from the window, cold and ethereal as moonlight. I turned to see a silver-haired man sitting casually on the sill. Human, why have you summoned me? I looked out at the endless snow. Pick me a white rose, my lord. On the night before I was to be sent away as a war prize, I was moved back to the palace under heavy guard. I lit candles and waited desperately. Anyone who came through that door, I would go with them. Anyone at all. The flames flickered as a wind that shouldn't exist stirred the air. The silver-haired demon materialized in a circle of light, holding a white rose. Are you my salvation? I sobbed, throwing my arms around his neck. Lillian. His bloodless lips curved in what might have been a smile. Those who carry white roses don't need gods. Footsteps thundered outside. Magical disturbance detected. Someone's in the princess's room. Send for the Holy Sun. My heart sank, but the man seemed calm. Little Rose, even I need time to break through their barriers. The door opened to admit Gabriel alone. I convinced the guards to wait outside, he said quietly. Midnight shift change gives you 10 minutes when the church guards replace the royal ones. I'll leave the southwest gate open. What about you? 06. I have my own plan. Just go. He embraced me briefly the first and last time. Don't cry, Lillian. Live well. Something small and cold slipped into my pocket as the midnight bells chimed. I never saw Gabriel again. Living with Lysander, I slowly learned the truth. He wasn't a demon, he was a vampire prince, ancient and powerful. Doesn't he get cold? I asked Alan, watching Lysander sleep in his coffin. Vampires have no body temperature, Alan explained patiently. I nodded and promptly jumped into the coffin with a blanket. Alan and Lysander both stared at me in bewilderment. Lysander was often absent, which frustrated me to no end. No one has ever been so bold around my master, Alan observed with amusement. Maybe it was because I knew my time was limited. When I told Lysander about my 17 years of imprisonment, about Gabriel being my only friend, about the suffocating loneliness, he listened in silence. I want to see the world, I said finally. All right. We traveled everywhere together, saw sapphire seas, walked through enchanted forests, witnessed the aurora borealis in snow-covered tundra. As my 20th birthday approached, my condition worsened. Lysander realized too late what was happening. Lillian, let me turn you, he begged. Accept my embrace and live forever. But I was terrified of eternity. Life is so fragile, I said weakly, grasping his hand. When I die, will you write something on my tombstone? 06. What? First I felt love, then I saw the rose. He gripped my wrist so tightly it hurt, as if he could anchor me to life through will alone. You should be happy for me, I whispered, though I suddenly realized how my death would devastate him. His immortal life would become an endless wasteland of grief. With my last breath, I smiled at him. If there's a next life, I want another white rose from you. Yes, he promised. In the attic, surrounded by candles and memories, I wept for both lives past and present. Lillian was buried closest to heaven, in the highest tower. Lysander was buried among the living, waiting day after day for someone to knock on his door. Gabriel remained forever in his cathedral, but no one ever came to tap on his window again. My past life. Their eternal suffering. Blood trickled from my lips as the memories settled. Like before, my 20th birthday was approaching, and with it, the same cursed fate. I want to claim you as mine, Lysander said, his voice breaking. To make you my eternal companion, my rose. I would give you my immortal gift. He closed his eyes. But I can't bear to curse you. Vampires were God's abandoned children, condemned to endless solitude. Immortality wasn't a gift, it was a punishment. You don't have to stay, I said softly. I'll wait here for you forever. He cradled my face in his hands. Lily, will you come with me? The question echoed across lifetimes, and finally, I understood his love. If your love sends me to hell, I whispered, reaching up to touch his lips, then let's go to hell together, my beloved. 3 days later, I opened my eyes under a blood-red moon. Reborn. Epilogue. 1,000 years later, archaeologists discovered a painting titled Love in the Ruins of an Ancient English Manor. The black-haired, dark-eyed girl sitting among fiery roses was perfectly preserved, her smile eternal. On the back, written in faded Hebrew, was an inscription, "To my beloved, love never ends, the end."